You know, staging is probably one of the most nuanced topics in real estate, and it's because people don't recognize that there's actually a whole lot of different types of staging, and they're not all appropriate for every single situation. So let's start by talking about the first type of staging that I do whenever I walk into a listing, which is staging for photography. What you have to recognize is that we all live in 3 dimensions, and yet whenever we take photos of a room, we're taking 3 dimensions and we're compressing it down into 2. What happens whenever we take 3 dimensions and compress it into 2 dimensions is that everything that's out in the room is suddenly right here. And that means it's a lot easier to make a room look cluttered in a 2-dimensional photo than it is in a 3-dimensional room. So what you'll find us doing in what we call a pre-photography appointment is decluttering the heck out of the entire house. And that doesn't mean that the seller needs to be on hoarding buried alive. It just means that we're actually trying to take as many items out of the room as possible so that whenever we look at the photo actually looks really well balanced. So that brings us into the first type of actual physical staging that we do, which I call the 3 Ds of staging. The 3 Ds are declutter, depersonalize, and define. So let's go through each of those one by one. Declutter means exactly what it sounds like, but there are actually some stipulations to this. You might look at your kitchen countertop now and you might think it's pretty clean. It's got, you know, a Keurig, and it's got a knife set, and it's got a bowl of fruit, and it's got a paper towel holder, and it's got some soap that you got from Bed Bath & Beyond. No, they're closed. Bath & Body Works, sorry. And that probably actually feels pretty comfortable and pretty clean to you, but in a photo, that's a lot. We have a rule of no more than 3 items on a countertop, and 3 items is kind of pushing it. So we often allow you to keep your Keurig, maybe a knife set, maybe a bowl of fruit, and everything else we hide in the cabinets. Also included in declutter is that we don't allow any items on the floor that are not furniture. So we pull up rugs, that wicker basket behind your couch that has copies of Highlights magazine from 1994, we take those out. And those Sterilite containers, those big plastic bins with all of your sewing equipment that you're never going to sew with, we take those out and hide them in a closet as well. Speaking of closets, if you can get items off of the floor in a closet, it's a walk-in closet. Every closet's a walk-in if you can walk in it. The next D of 3D staging is depersonalize, and depersonalize doesn't just mean photos. It's not a controversial opinion at all that if people see photos of you whenever they go and look at your house, they're going to imagine you living there instead of trying to imagine them and their families living there. But I take it a step further. I don't think that you should have diplomas on the wall. I don't think we should know what sports team you're rooting for. I don't think we should know what religion you practice. We're staging it like a model home. We don't need your personality intervening in the buyer's search. The third D of 3D staging is define. And define means we have to define each room as what it's supposed to be. So if it's a formal dining room, for example, it needs to have a dining room table. If it's a bedroom, it needs to have a bed. As we move along into the mid-2020s, what we see is a lot of rooms getting repurposed for things like offices and flex spaces and craft rooms, and that's all very, very cool. But the thing is, what we know about buyers in the modern era is that attention spans are very, very low and distraction is very, very high. So if your dining room is staged like a second living room, those buyers who have that dining room table that there is an heirloom in their family and it was left to them by their grandmother will walk out of your house thinking, that house doesn't have a dining room. Don't allow this to happen. Define. The next type of staging that we can talk about is virtual staging. So a lot of times we have rooms in a house that are vacant. You know, you've got a 2,500 square foot house and it's just you and your significant other and your dog, and you don't need 3, 4 bedrooms and things like that, and you just don't have furniture in a certain room. We can actually take that photo and superimpose furniture into it, and we often do, to make sure people realize like, oh, there's a bedroom and there's the size bed it can fit. Very cool. Be careful, you don't want to lean too much on virtual staging. The final type of staging that's really popular on all of the shows on HGTV that you've watched is actual physical staging, and it depends on how large your house is, and it also depends on what price point your house is going to be at that determines the cost of this type of staging. I've seen sellers spend anywhere from $2,500 all the way up to $10,000 to stage their homes. Just remember that you have options, and the way that we stage a home for photos is not the way that we stage a home for showings, and the way that we stage a home for showings is probably not 100% conducive with the way that you live every day. It pays to have a professional that knows the difference.